Hello everybody, this is Marcel here. Today I want to talk about women in the military and how they've influenced the military over the years that I've been in it. I joined the armed forces back when I was 17. Before that I was doing things like the Civil Air Patrol. I've interacted with virtually every branch of the military. I've been on several deployments. I have seen an evolution from a time where there was basically no females whatsoever, depending on your MOS or your tech school, the job that you do, all the way up to the point where now they're talking about accepting transgendered people if they haven't already. That's a huge freaking jump, even in as much as 12 years. In this video, I plan to cover my thoughts on women in the military, whether or not they should be in at all, and what should change if they plan to stay and be successful, or at least in the concept of combat roles. As a side thought, although I'm not in a position where anybody from the government's going to come after me for saying stuff, I would like to put a disclaimer that I'm not speaking on behalf of the military or the government in any sense. This is just a thought-provoking discussion presented by an anthropomorphic snake. Let's say for entertainment purposes. First of all, let's point out a couple of things. What a person does in the military has more influence on their experience with it than just simply being a soldier in of itself. The average person may think of a soldier in the same way that they do a fireman or a police officer, where just that title gives you a pretty good representation of what they do. Probably fight fires. But there is a lot of complexity in those jobs as well. But in the case of a soldier, they have specific jobs as to what they're supposed to do, and the soldiering is just an addition to that. Considering that soldiers could be in infantry, or could be a driver or a pilot, a rocket scientist, even a nuclear submarine engineer. There's hundreds, even thousands of different positions, and the way that women would interact or plug in to those positions varies greatly. But one thing is almost universal when it comes to women and their interaction, their experience with the armed forces. And that is that the institution that is put into play, the rules and expectations that are supposed to protect them, is actually crippling them as soldiers, and I'm going to explain why. One of the biggest complaints that I've ever gotten from my female soldiers, and it's quite frequently, is that they don't feel like they're part of the team. Realize when it comes to the military, teamwork is everything. Having everyone in the group be able to act like parts of a flowing machine is what leads to survival, and when something breaks that down, it can severely damage that system, even get people killed. The feeling of isolation comes from a couple of different sources. Firstly, women are treated differently in almost every aspect of their career. At no time can you have a lone female soldier in the presence of a male. There has to be another female present in every situation. This is because of a combination of the constant expectation that any guy is potentially going to harm that female, in addition to the fact that females are presented as something of a liability, and if anything does happen, it reflects poorly on the military and on their leadership. In a sense, they have to have a 24/7 female witness. Although soldiers are always supposed to go in teams whenever traveling, the gender-specific portions only apply to women. They are required to have separate housing, separate leisure areas, separate bathrooms, and considering in some situations that those accommodations are very hard to come by depending on job title, it's not uncommon for them to get stuck somewhere far out away from the group. Now, not all of the isolation comes from the institution alone. There is a dramatic difference in the way that males interact with each other versus females. A good example is if you put a bunch of males together, they will typically diffuse and give each other as much space as possible. There won't be much of a cliquish mentality where they group together. For trained soldiers, they usually come to a group whenever there's a mission or task at hand, and then that group disbands whenever the task is done. We're just talking averages here, not every situation. For females, I frequently see the opposite. When they're in a relaxing moment, they click together in a group, they draw in on each other for the attention, But then when something needs to get done, they disband. There is definitely a breakdown when it comes to expectations as to how a woman is supposed to act when it comes to hard labor. Does anyone really want them to pick up that 150-pound tank chain? Does she feel socially awkward if she picks it up like it's nothing and doesn't even care? Is it awkward if she asks for help? Is she even physically capable? They're surrounded by their male peers and thinking about how they're perceived. Considering moving the chain is her job, is it inappropriate for a male soldier to step up and say, hey, let me get that for you? All of these things would matter to a female, whereas for a male, nobody gives a crap. They just pick up the chain and move it. Nobody thinks that the social programming that came from society and growing up stops just because they're in combat, right? The same romantic and social tensions that happened everywhere else with the genders still happen there. The real main difference is that if everyone doesn't pull their weight, the mission could fail, and that's when people die. Another thing that makes it very difficult for women to be taken seriously in the military is whenever they try to lay back on their gender or on their beauty, it becomes extremely obvious. There used to be a term for it back in the day. They called it parade pretty. There's parade rest where you stand with your hands behind your back. Well, parade pretty is when a woman would put her hands behind her back and try to do the whole up shoulders, cute face, like, oh, come on, Sergeant, duck lips and all. It really doesn't go over very well, especially to the stone-cold, steely-eyed combat veteran that's trying to teach her how to survive. Then you take things like the concept of dating in the military, and I'm saving all that for a whole nother video. It gets bad, and how the military interacts with people that are dating, soldiers that are dating, and how they handle situations where something goes wrong. It's bad. Let's just leave it at that for now. Then you have the shifting of standards, which I recall was the #1 complaint of most of the male soldiers. Like, why does she only have to do that many push-ups? Why does she get the job when I scored a third higher than she did? Even though the jobs are exactly the same and have to be regardless of who the soldier is, they have to change the standards to allow females to get in because they wouldn't meet the standards if held to the same bar as a male. At least that seems to be the expectation. Part of me wonders if they would perform better if they were actually given the opportunity to. There was a push a while ago to open up a new physical standards test that was job specific, and I would have really liked to have seen that go through, because there are situations where people are not physically capable, regardless of gender, of doing whatever job title they're working for. I haven't seen it happen or heard of it happening, but that would be an excellent way to keep people from getting into jobs that they can't handle. Hello there, little 90-pound female soldier. You're more than welcome into this tanker job. All you gotta do is lift that big chain once. I know. Shame on me, Marcel. It'd be far better to just let her in and hope she never actually has to lift one, right? There'll always be a guy around to help her anyway. A big part of how I look at this whole situation, take a guy off the street, clean cut, shaved head, normal guy, and put him in a uniform. And then stand him next to a combat veteran who's got countless years in service. And everything about what they're wearing looks the same. What's the difference? What is the difference between those two people? Well, naturally, the soldier has all of that experience, the knowledge, the training, the background. They would know how to react in certain situations, whereas the civilian does not. So you can't just put a uniform on someone who doesn't have the training and call them a soldier. They're not. They're just a person in a uniform. So you take a woman, you don't give her the same quality of training, you don't allow her to mesh and integrate with her comrades, you separate her, isolate her, treat her like a liability, don't make her meet the same standards. Is she a soldier? If we agree that the training and the standards are what make a soldier, then she's not. Or at the very least, she's less of a soldier. And that's what needs to change. I have no issues working with women. I've worked with them through the greater part of my career. I mind my own business. I'm there if they need my help. And for the most part, they'll mind theirs. If you're a leader out there currently, I would recommend you treat all of your soldiers as equals, but still be compassionate to their own individual needs. I realize that the expectation is to be gender blind when the institution clearly is not. It becomes a balancing act that I'll try to get into in another video. But in the big picture here, if they're ever going to be taken seriously, females that is, or if they want to take themselves seriously, they have to raise the bar. I have seen exceptional soldiers of both genders that have outperformed their peers in multitudes of ways. The pandering, the gender quotas, all that crap needs to stop. And until it does, what can I say? The enemy's bullets don't discriminate. Going into combat with half the training is getting set up for failure. In the meantime, take care of your comrades, because you're a family, no matter what. Thinking about this topic has inspired me to open another channel, and I'm going to have a lot of content going into it soon. I'm calling it Sergeant Marcel. If you're interested, I'll put a link in the description down below. It's going to have a mix of combat training, leadership fundamentals, all the way to survival training. I'll put videos about cool guns that come out and stuff. All those topics. It should be really interesting. If that's your thing, or if you just want to help me out establishing that channel, send a sub my way. In the meantime, I barely grazed the surface of the things that were going on in the military when I was in. So if you want to hear more about it, let me know down below. I'll make a video or answer you. If you enjoyed what I had to say, like and subscribe.